If your thoughts are not yours, not in the dramatic sense, not as if someone else planted them there, not as if the mind is being controlled by some hidden force, but in the quieter, stranger sense, what if most of what you call thinking is not something you create, but something you receive? What if the mind is less like a room where you write every sentence and more like a river where sentences appear, collide, dissolve and return? A memory rises without permission. A fear touches the surface before you understand why. A song repeats itself all morning. An old conversation comes back while you are brushing your teeth, and suddenly you are defending yourself to someone who is not in the room. And all day long, because the thoughts sound like you say, I am thinking. But look closely. Did you choose the first thought that appeared this morning? Did you choose the image that arrived when you were trying to focus? Did you choose the worry that tightened your chest before anything bad had happened? The mind speaks in your voice. That is why it feels like ownership. But voice is not the same as authorship. This is the door cogito current walks through. Descartes gave the modern world one of its most famous anchors. I think, therefore I am. In a universe he could doubt, thinking seemed undeniable. If doubt was happening, something had to be there. Something had to exist. But the more carefully we watch thought, the more unstable that certainty becomes. Thinking may prove that experience is happening. It may prove that awareness is present. But does it prove that there is a fixed thinker behind every thought? Or is the thinker partly created by the stream after the current has already begun? This is not an abstract puzzle. It becomes personal the moment a thought hurts you. When the mind says, I am not enough, you feel it as truth. When it says, they are leaving, you feel it as prophecy. When it says, I will always be this way, the sentence can wrap itself around the future like a chain. The danger is not that thoughts arise. The danger is that the voice inside you borrows the authority of the self. So before we ask what consciousness is, we have to ask a simpler question. When a thought appears, who is standing on the shore? The strange thing is that most of us never ask this until the stream becomes painful. When thoughts are useful, we call them intelligence. When they are beautiful, we call them imagination. When they solve a problem, we call them clarity. But when the same mind starts repeating a fear at midnight, rehearsing regret, or turning a small silence from someone else into evidence of abandonment, suddenly thought reveals its power. It can build a room and lock you inside it. You can be lying in bed, physically safe, while the mind projects a future so vividly that the body reacts as if danger has already arrived. Your heart speeds up, your stomach tightens, your jaw braces. Nothing has happened in the room, and yet something has happened in the stream. This is why thought is never merely abstract. Every sentence inside the mind has a body. A judgment changes posture. A memory changes breath. A fear changes the muscles around the eyes. A hope changes the temperature of the chest. The stream is not floating above the body like mist. It runs through the nervous system, through chemistry, through pulse, through sensation. And because the body answers thought so quickly, thought begins to feel like reality. If a thought can make the body tremble, surely it must be true. But this is not always so. A horror movie can make the body tremble. A dream can make the body sweat. A remembered insult can bring back the heat of the original moment years after the room has disappeared. The body is honest about what it is experiencing, but it is not always confirming the truth of the story. It is confirming the power of the image. That distinction matters, because once the mind and body form a loop, the stream becomes self-reinforcing. A thought creates tension, the tension feels like evidence. The evidence strengthens the thought. Then the thought creates more tension. Soon you are not just thinking a fear, you are inhabiting a world built by the fear. This is why the question of the shore matters. Not because there is a perfect detached observer who can float above life untouched, but because without some space around thought, the stream becomes the only world you know.
You do not need to escape the mind. You need to learn when the mind has become a lens. William James gave us the phrase that still haunts psychology, the stream of consciousness.
He was trying to describe something everyone knows from the inside, but almost no one can hold still long enough to define. Consciousness does not arrive as separate blocks. It does not move like beads on a string. It flows. There are half-thoughts, moods, bodily feelings, memories, images, fragments of language, silent leanings toward what might happen next. A thought is rarely alone. It carries a tone. It leans into another thought. It opens into a memory, then into a fear, then into a plan, then into a sensation in the throat. Before you can say where one thought ends, another has already begun. And still, somehow, you feel continuous. This may be the first mystery. The river is changing, but something calls it mine. You do not say, anger is moving through consciousness. You say, I am angry. You do not say, a fearful image appeared. You say, I am afraid. You do not say, the mind is narrating a possible future. You say, I know what is going to happen. The string becomes identity because we keep mistaking movement for self. Try this in the most ordinary way. Sit for 10 seconds and wait for the next thought. Do not force one. Do not perform meditation. Do not try to become peaceful. Just wait. Something appears. Maybe a word, maybe an image, maybe the thought, nothing is happening. Maybe the thought, this is silly. Maybe the thought, I hope this works. But before it appeared, where was it? And when it appeared, did you manufacture it? Or did you witness it arrive? This is not a trick. It is the beginning of a different relationship with the mind. A thought can be present without being a command. A fear can be present without being a prophecy. A memory can be present without becoming the whole story of who you are. The stream is real as experience, but not every current deserves your obedience. Now the science enters, but it does not make the mystery smaller. It makes it stranger. The brain is not silent beneath the stream. Every thought has some relationship to the body: memory, emotion, attention, prediction, language, and the living architecture of the nervous system. Modern neuroscience does not show us a ghostly mind floating apart from biology. It shows us a system of astonishing complexity. Networks speak to networks, sensory signals make stored patterns. The brain predicts what may happen next, compares that prediction with incoming information, and updates the model moment by moment. This is one reason consciousness feels like a stream instead of a still photograph. The brain is always leaning forward. In ordinary life, this predictive movement is useful. You can catch a falling glass because the brain anticipates motion. You can understand a sentence before the final word arrives because the brain is already preparing meaning. You can walk through your house in the dark because memory and prediction cooperate before sight gives you every detail. Prediction is not the enemy, it is part of how a living organism survives. But the same power that lets the brain complete a pattern can also trap it inside a pattern. If the nervous system learned that closeness leads to pain, it may predict rejection before love has a chance to speak.
If childhood taught you that mistakes were dangerous, the mind may treat every imperfect email, every awkward pause, every unfinished project as a threat to belonging. The stream does not simply show what is happening now, it shows what the brain has learned to expect from now. This is where identity becomes a prediction. The mind says, this is how people treat me. This is what always happens. This is who I am under pressure. This is what I can never change. And because the prediction feels familiar, the familiar starts to feel true. That is one of the quiet tragedies of consciousness. The mind can mistake recognition for reality. A thought returns often enough, and eventually you stop hearing it as a thought. You hear it as the flaw. Even in silence, it is not doing nothing. It is maintaining a world. It is remembering who you have been,
imagining what may threaten you, rehearsing unfinished conversations, preparing the body for futures that may never arrive. This is why a quiet room is not always quiet inside. The past speaks, the future speaks, the body speaks, the old wound speaks, the unfinished task speaks, the imagined judgment of someone who is not even near you speaks. And because all of this appears in the theatre of awareness, the mind says, this is me. But here is the question most people miss. If the brain is generating, filtering, predicting and revising the stream, does that make the stream more you or less you? At first, science seems to reduce the question. A thought is neural activity, a memory is a pattern, a feeling is chemistry and circuitry.
Attention is a process. Selfhood is a model. But if you stay with the science long enough, it becomes strange again. Because the brain does not hand you raw reality. It gives you a guided experience, a world shaped for survival, meaning and action. The stream of consciousness is not a clear window simply opened onto truth. It is more like a river carrying sediment from every place it has touched. Childhood, culture, language, fear, desire, love, loss, sleep, hunger, shame, hope, the body, the nervous system, the last thing someone said, the first thing someone never apologised for. By the time a thought reaches the surface, it is already carrying history. This is why the same event creates different streams in different people. Someone does not answer your message. One mind says, they are busy. Another says, I did something wrong. Another says, people always leave. Another thinks nothing at all and goes back to making lunch. The event is simple. The stream is not. The stream is the event passing through a life. Once you see this, thought becomes less like a judge and more like evidence. Not evidence that the thought is true, but evidence that something in the system has been activated. Some thoughts are signals, some are habits, some are protections, some are rehearsals, some are echoes, some are old maps trying to explain a new landscape, and some are simply noise moving through a system that has not settled yet. This is where the practical shift begins. When a thought rises, you can ask 3 questions. What is appearing? What is it carrying? And does it need to be obeyed? Notice, name, return.
Notice the thought as an event. Name it simply: fear, planning, memory, judgment, rehearsal, protection. Then return to the field in which it appeared. The breath, the body, the sound in the room, the simple fact that the thought is known. This is not suppression. You are not pushing the river away. You are learning not to drown every time the water moves. The practice is small enough to miss. When the mind says, I am failing, notice the sentence. Name it. Judgment. Return to the body. Feet on the ground. Breath in the ribs. Sound in the room. When the mind says, they are upset with me, notice the image of their face, the imagined tone, the future conversation already forming. Name it. Prediction. Return to what is actually present. When the mind says, I will never change, notice how final the sentence wants to feel. Name it. Old story. Return to the fact that the sentence is appearing now, and because it is appearing now, it is not the whole of you. It is an event in awareness. Do this gently. If you use awareness as a weapon against thought, the mind simply creates a new stream called, I should not be thinking. Then you are trapped again, only now the cage has spiritual language. The goal is not to become someone without thoughts. The goal is to become someone who can recognize a thought before building a life around it. Many contemplative traditions point toward this same shift. They do not ask you to destroy thought. They ask you to stop becoming it automatically. A thought can be present without being obeyed.
A fear can be present without becoming prophecy. A desire can be present without becoming destiny. A story can be present without being the whole truth. This is where psychology and contemplative philosophy begin to meet. Cognitive diffusion, mindfulness, witness consciousness, metacognition, self-inquiry. Different languages, different traditions, but a shared movement. Awareness, learning to see thought as thought. And this is where the story turns. The deeper question is not whether thoughts arise. They do. The deeper question is why the stream feels like a self. One answer is memory. Memory gives consciousness a storyline. It tells you that the person who woke up this morning is connected to the child you once were, the teenager you survived, the mistakes you regret, the dreams you still carry, and the face you recognise in the mirror. Without memory, the stream would still flow, but it would lose much of its shape. Memory ties the water into a river. Another answer is language. Language turns experience into narration. It lets the mind say, I am this kind of person. This happened to me. I want this. I fear that. This is my life. Language is not false. Without it, the inner world would be almost impossible to share. But language can harden the stream into a statue. A passing sadness becomes I am a sad person. A mistake becomes I always ruin things. A moment of fear becomes I am weak. A repeated thought becomes this is the truth about me. The stream becomes a prison when the mind forgets it is moving. And yet even this prison is made of movement.
The story of you has to be retold every day to feel real. This is why change is possible. Not easy, not instant, not magical, but possible. Because the self you experience is not a stone hidden somewhere behind the eyes. It is a living pattern, continuously updated through attention, memory, action, emotion, language, and interpretation. This does not make the self fake in the cheap sense. A pattern can be real without being permanent. A melody is real while it is being played, even though no single note contains the whole song. A wave is real while it rises, even though it is never separate from the sea. A story can shape a life, even if its meaning changes when the next chapter arrives. The self may be like that. Not an illusion in the sense of nothing, an illusion in the sense of misplacement. We look for a solid owner behind experience, when what we actually find is experience organising itself around memory, body, language, relationship, and attention. This is why the stream of consciousness can feel so intimate and yet remain so difficult to possess. The stream is yours in the way a song is yours while you are singing it. But if you try to freeze the song into a single note and call that the singer, something essential disappears. The brain practices you, the mind rehearses you, the body expects you, and awareness, quietly, can begin to notice the rehearsal. This is where the stream becomes spiritual without leaving the ground. To watch thought is not to deny the brain. It is to see the brain from the inside.
To notice a mental pattern is not to escape biology. It is biology becoming transparent to itself. To ask who is aware of thought is not necessarily to reject science. It is to admit that first-person experience cannot be fully replaced by third-person description. A brain scan may show correlates of attention, memory, emotion, and self-referential processing. It may show activity in networks associated with narrative identity. It may show prediction, salience, regulation, and bodily feeling. But it does not feel the ache of an old thought returning at midnight. It does not taste the silence after a belief collapses. It does not know what it is like when, for one strange second, the mind stops narrating and awareness remains. This is not an argument against science. It is a reminder of what science is looking at from the outside. The stream of consciousness is both intimate and observable, personal and patterned, biological and existential. It belongs to the brain, but it is not exhausted by the language of machinery. It belongs to the self, but it keeps changing the self it seems to belong to. It belongs to time, yet sometimes in deep attention,
it opens into something that feels strangely timeless. That is why people throughout history have turned inward. Not because the inner world is always peaceful, often it is not, but because the stream contains the clues of bondage and freedom. Watch what repeats and you learn what your nervous system expects. Watch what triggers you and you learn what still hurts. Watch what you defend and you learn what identity is protecting. Watch what you avoid and you learn where fear has built a temple.
Watch what becomes quiet when you stop feeding it, and you learn how much of the self was made of momentum. Now, the deeper question is not what the brain is doing, it is who or what is aware of it. Be careful here. The mind will try to turn awareness into another object. It will imagine a little watcher behind the eyes, a cleaner version of the ego standing apart from the river, observing everything from a private shore. But if you look closely, even the watcher appears. The sense of observing appears. The feeling of being behind the eyes appears. The sentence, "I am watching my thoughts," appears. So is the watcher the final self, or another current in the stream? For a moment, do not answer. Just listen. There is sound. There is sensation. There may be thought. There may be resistance. There may be curiosity. There may be a subtle effort to understand. All of it appears. The mind wants to locate the one who knows it. It wants an address. Behind the eyes, inside the head, somewhere in the chest, somewhere just outside thought. But every location you find is itself known. The feeling behind the eyes is known. The sensation in the chest is known. The image of a watcher is known. The idea of awareness is known. This does not mean there is no awareness. It means awareness is not found as another object floating inside itself. The eye does not see itself as one more thing in the room. It sees by opening the room. In the same way, awareness may not be another current in the stream. It may be the openness in which the stream is recognised, and yet even that sentence is only a pointer. The moment you turn it into a belief to defend, it becomes another ripple. So the invitation is not to believe something exotic, it is to look directly, carefully and honestly at the next thought that appears. This is where simple answers fail. The thinker is not destroyed. You still need a functional self. You need to remember your name, keep promises, answer messages, pay bills, apologise, plan dinner, protect your body, love particular people in particular ways. The point is not to erase the self. The point is to stop confusing the self with every passing current. There is a difference between having a thought and being captured by it. There is a difference between remembering pain and rebuilding your identity around it. There is a difference between hearing the stream and believing it is the whole ocean. This difference begins small, a breath before reacting, a pause before believing, a moment where you say, this is a thought, not a command, a moment where you say, this is fear, not prophecy, a moment where you say, this is an old story, not the only truth available. These moments do not look dramatic from the outside. No thunder, no halo, no sudden enlightenment. But inside a life, they matter. Because every time awareness separates slightly from automatic thought, the future becomes less mechanical. The stream still moves, but it no longer carries you in exactly the same way. And maybe this is the quiet reversal hidden inside cogito current. Descartes searched for certainty by noticing that doubt itself proved something undeniable. But when we watch the stream of consciousness, we find a different kind of certainty. Not the certainty that every thought is true, not the certainty that the self is fixed, not the certainty that the thinker is a separate object inside the mind. Something more subtle. Thoughts appear, they change, they vanish, they return, they pretend to be final, they dissolve. And still, there is the fact of awareness.
Not awareness as a doctrine, not awareness as a spiritual trophy, not awareness as a conclusion that wins an argument. Just this simple, immediate mystery. Experience is happening. The stream is known. Before you decide what it means, it is already here. Before you turn it into a story, it is already moving. Before you call it mine, it has already appeared in the open field of consciousness. Maybe the self is not the stream. Maybe the self is not even the shore. Maybe what you are is closer to the capacity in which river, shore, weather, memory and meaning all appear. That doesn't solve the mystery. It deepens it. And maybe that is the point. Because tonight, or tomorrow morning, or in the middle of some ordinary moment, a thought will appear again. It may tell you who you are. It may tell you what to fear. It may tell you what cannot change. It may speak with the authority of your whole past. And perhaps, instead of obeying immediately, you will listen differently. Not with suspicion, not with shame, but with a quiet question. Is this the truth?
Or is this only the stream passing through me? And if it is only the stream, then who is the one who knows it is moving?